morning. Good morning. Good morning. All right, so today we are going to do a little bit more work talking about money. So this week's episode of Small Biz Mama is all about um, the 5 ways to save more money without feeling it. Okay, and I really love that episode because a lot of it is like completely automatic, and I love stuff like that. It's great. So make sure you check out that episode. You can go to smallbizmama.com/latest. And that episode will pop up this week, or you can go to smallbizmama.com and look for that episode. But I'm really excited about that one because that's a way that we have very slowly and methodically kind of put money aside and paid off debt. It's really funny because I was checking. One of the things I recommend is Acorns. Okay, and if you go to the podcast page, there's a link to Acorns, and I think if you use my link, you'll actually get a little bonus in your account, which is pretty cool. But essentially, what Acorns is it's a rounding app. Okay, and so what it does is you connect up your bank accounts and you connect up your credit cards, and anytime you spend money, it keeps track of how much the roundup would be. And the roundup is like, say you spend $10 and 50 cents. It would say, okay, well, to round up that transaction, the nearest dollar would be 50 cents. And so it keeps track of those amounts. And then when it hits $5, it pulls that money out of whatever account you tell it to, and it will invest that money for you. So we've been doing that, I think, for 2.5 years, I think, is when we started using it. I don't even know if it's been that long. But we have it hooked up to our credit cards that we use and to our checking account, which we don't have a lot of activity in our checking account, and I can talk about that at some point too. But we have, the last time I checked, we have almost $1,500 in our Acorns account. And it's literally just, like I said, it's those little bits, and it's $5 here and $5 there. We don't even miss the money. And we have $1,400 in that account, which is pretty cool. So that's one of the things that we talk about in that podcast episode. I'd love for you to check it out so you can get the other 4. I'd also love to know too, as you're coming online, what are the things that you struggle with the most with money, so I can make sure that I address those as we finish up this topic this week. And if any of my members from Empowered Bookkeeper Network, if they have more money questions, you can post those in the group at any time, and I'm happy to help you with those. You can also go to askkristen.net if you've got money questions as well, and we'll make sure that we get those addressed for you. Okay, so one of the questions that we got was, I feel like I'm always shuffling money around, right? And so I think it's that classic thing that you are, you're robbing Peter to pay Paul kind of thing, right? And this, I think, is especially true if you have income that varies. And a lot of small business owners have issues with this, that their income is not always the same, right? We have these hills and valleys in our business. We have this in one of our businesses, right? Because a lot of my revenue comes in during tax season. And then we've got other income from consulting and bookkeeping that comes in all year long, but we really have a lot of income that comes in like January to April. And so the mistake that a lot of business owners make when they have a business like this is that or even like, for example, like I know if you wait tables or if you do anything tip related, you've got some days that are really good. You've got some weeks that are really good. And then you have other time periods that are slower, right? And so what do? And I think our natural inclination is when we have a whole bunch of money come in, we send it right back out. And if you have income that varies, you need to hold off on that a little bit. What I recommend for a lot of people I know that have variable income is you have to set a minimum income that is going to come in. You have to have like a baseline income that you know is going to come in. And I know that that's kind of hard to do. But I think what happens a lot of times is that we budget based off of like best case scenario. And I've worked with a lot of people over the years who have who work a lot of overtime. And then and they build their budget based off that overtime. And then what happens is when the overtime goes away, they're sunk, right? And so what I'd like to see you do instead is I'd like you to say, okay, I'm not going to build my ideal spending plan based off of this high point. I'm going to build it based off of, what my actual income is, okay, without the overtime. And then so Sarah got her 3 David Bach books. That's awesome. I'd love to know which 3 you got, Sarah. I think that would be, I'd love to know. Hopefully Automatic Millionaire is one of them. Because that's one of the books I talk about in the podcast episode. So if you build it based off of here, right, off the lower point, and then you have extra income come in, right, then you can say, okay, what am I going to do with this? Do I want to, are we going to save it for specific things? Are we going to use it to pay down debt? Are we going to start, saving for a car? And that's what Jeff and I did when we were paying off all our debt is, last time I kind of talked about, going through writing down your income, writing down your expenses and figuring out how those expenses come through. And if you missed that one last week, on Tuesday, make sure you go back and watch that. But if you instead say, okay, this is my minimum amount of income, right? So for some of you, it's going to be, the weeks that the tips are crappy. It's going to be the weeks that maybe your business income is low. Maybe it's the weeks that you're not working the overtime. And so what you need to do is you need to look at those lower end weeks and say, okay, this is how much money comes in. Now, what am I going to pay with that money? Okay. And then what you can do is if there are more bills left than there is money, then you have to say, okay, if another dollar comes in, what am I going to pay? If another, if that gets all paid, if another dollar comes in, what do we pay? And some of that, remember, I talked last time about the fact that you can contact your bill collectors and you can say, we talked to Verizon and got our bill moved. We've talked to, because what I actually like to do is I like to have everything come out at the beginning of the month. And it's part of that is because when Jeff got his first full-time job, he got paid once a month. And so we kind of got into this habit where we paid everything at the beginning of the month. And then we had to live off of whatever was left and whatever money I could make. And so, there is nothing wrong. You can call your credit card companies. You can call your student loans. You can call everybody out there and say, hey, listen, I've been looking at my budget. I'm trying to get my cash flow, working. Can we move this payment to another day? Okay. And I know a lot of you get paid, every 2 weeks, right? Even as small business owners, a lot of people pay themselves every 2 weeks. And so what I would do is have have some payments due around the 5th of the month and have some payments due around the 20th of the month. Because even as those pay dates shift, you should be okay for the 5th and the 20th. Okay. Don't make it like the 1st and the 15th. Because as your paychecks shift, that's not going to be as effective. Okay. So usually the 5th and the 20th are pretty good. But do that, lay everything out, right? Go watch the video from Tuesday, lay everything out and say, okay, this is where things need to be so that the cash flow works. Because I think a lot of times we just kind of throw our hands up in the air, or we put our heads in the sand and we say, Lord, I just hope to God that this works, right? Let this work for us. And sometimes, God sits there and goes, why I allow you to move your Verizon due date? So that you can help yourself, right? And so I really believe that we have these tools, right? We have the ability to do these things to help us, right? To help us manage our cash flow better. And so I'd really encourage you to do that. So then what do you do? What do you do if there's extra money left over? So what if you say, okay, I paid all my bills, I put aside money for gas and groceries, and there's this extra money left over. What do I do? Well, that's where knowing what your money priorities are is really important. Because if you don't have a plan for that money, it's going to end up at the Dollar Tree. It is going to end up at the Target. It is going to end up at Home Goods. You know what I'm talking about, right? You know what I'm talking about, okay? And so it is really important for you to know, okay, what are my money goals? Do I want to pay off debt? Do I want to be saving money? Do I want to be doing a little bit of each? I will tell you that even when we were paying off our debt, one of the things that I really kind of disagreed with Dave Ramsey about, we always put money in our retirement, especially if there was a match from our employer, because you're leaving money on the table if there's a match from your employer. And so we always put in to get the full match from our employer. And then we paid down debt, and we were pretty gazelle intense about paying down our debt. We paid down $220,000 in consumer debt. That was medical debt and credit cards and a car loan, student loans. It was a home equity loan that we used when we bought the house. And so it was just a tremendous amount of debt that we paid off. And it wasn't, and we used these strategies. Literally, when we got paid, I would actually sit down with a piece of paper. Okay. Honest to God, this is, and you guys, if you know me, I'm not a paper person. I would sit down with a piece of paper, and this is Eric drawing. And I'd say, okay, this is how much money just came into our bank account. Okay. And I would take whatever was left in the bank account on the day we got paid. I would take whatever was left in there. I would send that to whatever debt we were working on. Okay. So if there was if there was $5 or, $700, whatever was left, I would say, okay, I'm going to send this off right to the credit card company, because I had my bills arranged in such a way that whatever money came in for that 2 weeks would cover us for that 2 weeks. Okay. If you're not there, if there's a little bit of a deficit, right, then you got to figure out how much money you need to hold on to. But so I'd write down, I'd say, okay, so we're starting with zero, right? Because I swept the money out of the account. I would write down, okay, Jeff got paid, and this is how much he got paid. I got paid, and that's how much I got paid. And I'd add it together. And I'd say, okay, I'd have a list of all of our bills, right? And they were organized by the date that they were due. Okay. And I would say, all right, what's going to come out in the next 2 weeks? Okay. So if our mortgage came out, I'd write that down. I'd write down that number, and I would just subtract it all. And I'd say, okay, how much money's left? All right. How much do I need for groceries? How much do I need for gas? Okay. And then this is how much money, I'd have a little wiggle room. I'd always have wiggle room, because you never know what's going to happen, right? Especially if you don't have any sort of emergency fund, which I'd recommend. People ask me this, how much emergency fund should you have initially when you're first starting? I like a month of expenses. Okay. If you can put aside a month of expenses, that's just going to help you sleep better at night. And then afterwards you can build up more than that. Okay. But to get started, that's a good place to start. So then I sit there and say, okay, so I've got some wiggle room, I've paid for all my stuff for the next 2 weeks, and this is how much money's left. Okay. And I would take that money right away, and I would send it off to whatever debt we were paying off that month. Don't wait till the end of the month, because it'll end up at Home Goods. It'll end up at World Market. I miss World Market. If you don't have a World Market next to you, World Market is a really cool store. They have great stuff. It's owned by Bed Bath & Beyond, and it's a really cool store. Don't go in there if you're trying to pay down debt, though. Not conducive for that. But it'll end up somewhere, right? Whatever your thing is. Maybe it's the entryway when you walk into Target. Is that a thing for any of you guys? Like where they have all of like the inexpensive little deals and the seasonal stuff, and you have to be careful about that when you go into the store, into Target. But you all have, right? There's like a little thing, and so if you do not earmark that money, whatever you want to do it for, it might be your dream fund, it might be your emergency fund, it might be your retirement savings, whatever your thing is, okay? Get that money put to where you want it to go, okay? And do it, like I said, do it like right when you get paid, okay? There's no, like, I gotta say, okay, when we were on our journey to pay off our debt, okay, the things that really helped us, okay, the things that really, really helped us is sitting down twice a month when we got paid and figuring out, okay, this is how much money we have. Where's it going to go? What are we going to do with it? Okay. And then making sure that we took any opportunities we had to try to make more money. I think sometimes people get so focused on how do I save, what do I cut out, that they don't actually focus on trying to get a bigger shovel. And trying to get a bigger shovel is a really good way to pay off debt. Plus, I find that, at least for us, the busier we were, and Jeff and I have always had like side hustles and side businesses and things like that, even before like I went full time. We were busy. There wasn't time to go, peruse Home Goods or peruse Target. You kind of went in, you got what you needed, and you got out. And so momentum and building momentum was just really, really helpful. And we are in a time right now where there are, it's funny because people join bookkeeper training school and they say, I can't possibly post on my wall that I'm a bookkeeper because my boss is going to see that. And I'm like, everybody has a side hustle now. Everybody has a side hustle. Like when we did it, and this was like, this is 14 years ago that we started, that I started my firm, that wasn't really a thing, right? You had your day job and you went home. Now everybody waits tables at night, does, Uber Eats, does, has a craft business, an Etsy business, a website, a blog, is a virtual assistant on the weekends, is a bookkeeper on the weekends. Like everybody has a side hustle now. And so if you go, and this is, whatever you decide to do to make a little bit extra money, it doesn't have to be bookkeeper training school, but don't be afraid to tell people. If you're doing network marketing, if you are doing, an Etsy shop, if you are doing, I have friends who are baking. I know a lot of people who are making hot chocolate bombs over Christmas, which is pretty awesome. Whatever your thing is, like, tell people, right? Because people can't support you. People can't buy from you if you don't tell people. And so I think it's critically important that you do that. And then if somebody's like, oh, what is this thing you're doing? Say, oh, this is just my side hustle. It's helping me pay off some debt or build up some savings or whatever, whatever your thing is. But don't be afraid to tell the world because, you're afraid of what somebody's going to say. And I'll be like really, really transparent here. It's funny. So I did a live for bookkeeper training for the Empower Bookkeeper Network on Monday, and my husband wasn't home. Okay. He was, visiting some family, and so I was home with Eric, and Eric did not want to go to sleep. Okay. And I am on this live, and Eric is like, he's 3, right? And he's like on my lap, and he is just wiggly. At one point, he got out a box and it looked like he was trying to climb the bookcase behind me. At one point, he pulled out like a whole bunch of books from one of the bottom cubbies and like crawled through the cubbies. And I'm like, oh my God, this is a hot mess. Oh my God. I'm like, my members are going to think that I'm a terrible mom. I'm a hot mess. You know, I am not equipped to do this. And it's going to be awful. And I had so many members reach out to me and say, thank you for showing us that. Like, thank you for showing that you're just a normal mom and you handled it with grace. And like, I was like crying. Like, I'm like reading these messages from our members and I'm like crying. Because like, I felt so, like I was so down after that. And our members just like lifted me back up. And that's going to happen when you start talking about your business. You're going to have like this one person that's going to be like, why don't you just go get a real job? Why don't you just do what other people do? You're never going to do this. You're going to have that person. Everybody has that person. But you know what? You're going to have, for that person, you're going to have 5, 10, 15, 40 people say, oh my God, I'm so excited for you. Congratulations. How can we help? Okay. Do not let the one person bring you down. And this happens too when you, trust me, when you start managing your money, okay, and when you start saving up money and you start paying things off and you say, no, I can't do this, you know, because I'm paying something off. I can't go on that vacation with you guys because we're doing this thing. And people are going to go, you're never going to. It's not going to, right? You have those people in your life, right? You have a couple of those. You just have to go, no, we've got this thing. Okay? We've got this thing. We're doing our thing. It's cool. Because trust me, you know what happens? At first, everybody was like, why are you doing that? Nobody does that. Everybody is dead. It's fine. It's good. Everybody. But when they start seeing like the fruits of your labor, everybody's going to go, how did you do that? How did you do that? Because people don't do that, right? How did you do that? I want to be like that. Okay. And then you're going to see the turnaround. Okay. Don't, you know, those naysayers, Teresa, let me tell you. Okay. It's funny because I will spend all day in the Empower Bookkeeper Network and everybody's like, thank you, Kristen. Oh my God. It's awesome. And then I will get like one nasty comment on YouTube. And I was like, oh. Right? And the thing that I have to remind myself when that happens, because like we get nasty comments on our ads all the time. I have people tell me I'm a fraud. I have people tell me that, you know, I'm not trying to help people. It's awful. Like, it's so bad. Like a lot of the things I can't even say on the video. Okay? And I just have to, you know, for that one person, I've got hundreds of people in bookkeeper training school who are doing awesome. Right? And I'm helping them, and, you know, I'm leaning into that. And so that's the thing, it's important to find your people, find your community, lean in with them. You know, if you've got really big money goals, you know, find somebody else that's got a really big money goal. Find an accountability partner. You know, that could be your spouse, that could be a friend, that could be somebody that you meet in an online group, you know, but have somebody that you can lean in with. Okay. So I hope that this was helpful. Keep your money questions going. I love talking about the money stuff, if you can't tell. 'Cause I think that that's a real block for a lot of people. And if we can kind of get ourselves in a better financial footing, mamas, we would all be less stressed, right? We would all be in a better place. And so I just want to help you with that however I can. All right. Thank you so much. Thank you for watching this video. Please go check out the podcast. It is Confessions of a Small Biz Mama. You can just type in Small Biz Mama. Wherever you listen to podcasts, we are on Apple, we're on Google, we are on Spotify, we are on Stitcher, we are on YouTube. We are everywhere that you would want to watch this. Let me know if you have any questions. Love you guys. Take care.